Hey friends, it's Laura with Laura's Handmade Haven. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. It is week 10 of our Let's Bake Quilt Sew Along. Can you believe it? I cannot believe we have made it to the last 4 blocks in the Quilt Top Center. We're gonna make 2 of those 4 blocks today, and they are gonna be the pink apron and the yellow apron. I have modifications for both of these blocks just because I don't wanna do any hand embroidery and I don't wanna use any rickrack. So we're gonna do a few things differently for these aprons, but they're gonna be so cute and I can't wait to get them into our quilt. Now, as you can see, I've already pulled my fabrics and I have everything stacked here on my design board. The first thing we're gonna do is head on over to the sewing machine, get our Sew Simple shapes sewn together, and then we're gonna make some bias tape, lay out our blocks, applique them down, trim them up, and have our reveal. So why don't you join me over at the sewing machine? All right, so we have 2 pieces for our cute little yellow apron. It's actually yellow and aqua. We have the smaller piece, which is going to be the little aqua overlay, and then we have the main apron piece, which is the yellow. I love both these fabrics so much. Now if you have not been sewing along with me, just so you know, I am using a ton of scraps from my stash. And so I have fabrics from several different collections. They're all Lori Holt fabrics, manufactured by Riley Blake. But I honestly couldn't tell you what is what because there are fabrics from Stitch and Mercantile and Hometown, and there's just so many different fabrics in this quilt. But like I said, I'm using up a bunch of scraps, and hey, anytime you can use up some scraps and not have to buy anything new, it is a good day. Now this apron I'm doing pretty much just like the Sew Along Guide has instructed us to do. The fabrics are not the same, of course, but the basic idea for the yellow and aqua apron are going to be the same. I am going to have a few little modifications, but we'll walk through those when we get to them. Now, the pink apron is where my big modification came in. If you look at the pink apron in the original design, you will see that there is some hand embroidery that you do on that cute little gingham print. But I don't have gingham and I'm not doing hand embroidery. So I decided to put in an accent strip. So I've updated the cheat sheet that I've given you guys with the dimensions for my accent pieces. And so I have 3 pieces of fabric that I'm sewing together for the pink apron. All right, so just to kind of help me line up where I want this accent piece on my apron, I'm just gonna put the piece on here to begin with because I want it to be even all the way across there, right? I don't want anything, I don't want my accent strip to be cattywampus on there. So I am just going to take this and just make a mark. And I'm going to use the bottom of my Sew Simple shape apron, and I'm going to line it up on one of the marks going across my ruler, and I'm going to draw a line straight across. And that line is going to serve the purpose of lining up my accent fabric on my apron. So now all I have to do is just take this, and you can feel that seam all the way across there, and that way I know my accent fabric is level all the way across my little pink apron. Now, if you're concerned it's going to shift on you, then feel free to get a pin out and pin it into place. It's not a bad idea. All right, that is all of the Sew Simple shapes that we have this week. So not very many, and I really feel like these blocks are going to come together pretty quickly, and that's why I know that the last few weeks I haven't really shown you the full process with just sewing all the Sew Simple shapes and cutting them out and trimming them and flipping them and all of that. And I really did that just because I wanted to kind of decrease the length of the video. We only have 3 Sew Simple shapes, and I really feel like this is not going to take that long. And then next week, we're making 2 more aprons. So yeah, if you're doing stitched flowers and you don't have those done, the next 2 weeks would be a great time to get those together because after we get our aprons done, we can assemble our quilt top center, and then we'll be assembling our entire quilt top. I honestly cannot believe that we've made such great progress on this quilt in such a short amount of time. I know that there are several people out there that have started this quilt years ago and still don't have it done. So I am very proud of us that we have stuck with it, and we are on the downhill slide at this point. Like I said, if you haven't gotten your stitched flowers or your applique flowers, either one, whichever one you're doing for the border done, the next 2 weeks would be a great time to spend that extra time on those, because I really don't think that these blocks are going to take you very long. All right, so I'm just using my Clover 2-point turner to turn out my apron. We'll take these over to the pressing board and give them a good press, make our bias tape, lay them out, applique them down, and we'll be done for the week. So what do you think? What do you think the worst week has been so far? Which one do you think that the blocks were just, either the blocks were difficult or there were a lot of them, or which week did you think has been the most work, I guess, is what I would say. All right, let's take these and press them and make our bias tape and lay out our blocks. All right, so we have some 1/2" bias tape and some 3/8 of an inch bias tape to make. The 3/8 was cut on a diagonal because it is true bias tape, and we'll be putting a curve into it. The other is just some straight bias tape, and we won't need to worry about a curve for that one. It's the cute little waistband on the apron. All the measurements and the lengths and everything that you need for these is in the sew along guide and also in the cheat sheet. So grab one of those and you will have the lengths of bias tape and straight bias tape that you need. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the 1/2" first. So I'm just going to lay these strips out and give them a little mist, but not at the ends because I want that dry so it will go through the bias tape maker easy. And I am just using a little straight pen just to push that little point through there a little better. And I'll just use my iron. Let me move this one out of the way. We don't want to dry it out before we make it into bias tape. All right, so there's this one. And then let's do the same thing. Kind of multitasking back and forth between our blocks here a little bit. Now we're going to switch to our 3/8 of an inch bias tape maker. And again, the widths and the lengths of what you need are in the sew along guide and in the cheat sheet, specifically for this block and week. And we are on week 10. 10 of 12. Can you believe that? I am so excited. If you need help with bias tape, be sure to check out my video. I do have a video that's specifically devoted to making bias tape and just the reasons why you do one over the other. So just check that out. If you definitely go way more into detailing about how to make bias tape and how to make it work for your projects. All right, these blocks will be trimmed down to 6.5 by 8.5. So I'm just going to lay this ruler here just to kind of keep myself in check a little bit, just to make sure I don't get my little apron strings too big. And it looks like the bottom of this apron is, it's pretty wide. It's 7 inches. And now I'm going to go ahead and make my apron strings before I make my apron band, my waistband, because that waistband is going to cover the apron strings a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put the curves in those. And this is why bias tape, true bias tape, is super fun, because we're just going to go ahead and press a curve into this length of bias tape. same thing with this one. Just pressing a curve into it. And we definitely don't need all of this. In fact, I think that you could probably get away with a lot less than I have here. We're going to center our apron here, and we have 3/4 of an inch on each side. And we're just going to, I want my apron strings to be a little, I don't know, organic, I guess. I want them to kind of go however they want. That will be pretty cute. Honestly, I don't care if they're even or not on each side. I just want them to be kind of hanging out there. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this. And then we'll glue it back onto itself for our finished end. And then I think, to just help myself, I'm gonna grab a pencil and I'm just going to make a little line here how I want it to go. Now you can do this or you can not do this. It's totally up to you. I want to check the height to make sure that I'm good. I definitely am. All right, so now I have a little line to glue on. And it's going to be just like we did, well actually it's going to be a lot easier, but similar to what we did for the mixers. Now they had you cut 2 12-inch strips for these apron ties, but I don't think that we would have needed that much. All right, now we have this wider piece of bias tape that we're going to use for the waistband. We're just going to cut the one end off straight, glue it back upon itself. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm just going to look across there and decide how long I want this. And I want it to be right about there, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut this on my ruler. And then I can bend it back where I want it exactly. And that's what it's going to look like on my block. So now when I put it on here, it's going to be ready just to go across. And I think what I'm going to do is just glue it to just the top of my apron, but not the ends, because then I'll be able to flip that up a little bit. Then I can flip this back and do my applique on both ends. And I can flip all of it back to do the applique for these, and then I can do the applique around the waistband at the end. All right, so now I'm going to put together my yellow apron. This is going to be a very similar process. The only difference with this one is that we do have that little aqua overlay, and it's supposed to have some hand embroidery in it. And if you're doing hand embroidery, please feel free. And you may want to do that before you put it onto your block, because that way you'll have less layers to go through. I am not going to do hand embroidery. I will show you what I'm going to do when we get to the sewing machine. And once again, I'm just going to line this up. And this is going to be the same exact process that we went through for the pink apron. All right, now we can go back to the sewing machine and start doing our machine applique and machine embroidery. Just in case this is the first video you've seen where I'm doing applique, let me tell you what I'm using. I'm using a Juki DX7 and I'm using the zigzag stitch. The default for the zigzag is 3.6 wide and 2.4 long. I adjust that to 1.8 wide and 0.9 long. So it is a very small zigzag stitch. And for our little pink apron, I am going to start with our apron ties. So I'm just going to start below where the top of that So Simple shape is. And I don't need to do a stay stitch or anything because I have another layer above it that's going to lock this into place, and so I don't have to worry about it. On that curve, just the same way as you would do your circles, just stop, go as slow as you need to, pivot when you need to, and keep going. I do like stopping on with my needle in the right hand position. That way it's on kind of the outside of the corner, not the inside. And that way it just gives you a really nice sharp point on your corner when you're turning. Now I don't know if you can tell, but I'm using both of my hands to kind of guide the fabric and turn it as I need to. Do the same thing for the other side. Now remember, we didn't glue down the ends of our waistband, and that's because we can now start underneath where that waistband is going to cover and just keep going with our applique zigzag. Now the last thing I have to do for this block is just sew the waistband of the apron down. So I'll start with a stay stitch because this is the top layer. There's nothing to hide and no other layers that are going to be locking that stitch into place. Oh, but it looks like I have a little bit of bias tape that's kind of sneaking out here on me. So I'm just going to use my little purple thing and push that in. You can also use a stiletto if you have one. Just don't try to do that with your finger that close to the needle. And then we'll end with a stay stitch as well. All right, so here's one of our little aprons, and we took the hand embroidery out of it. We have that cute little accent fabric instead. All right, so for our little yellow apron, the first part of this is all going to be the same. So I'm just going to do the apron strings, the apron. Now this little apron is supposed to have some embroidery going across the lower edge of it and coming up with a bunch of little flowers on it. And that is super cute. And if you want to do that, I think that you should. But I am not going to do that. I'm going to use some decorative stitches and my Sew Line chalk pencil to keep myself in line. And I am going to come up with a different little decorative stitch to go across my apron. So I have all kinds of decorative stitches, and if I look on here, there are definitely some little flowers that I could put on here that would be very similar to the original intent of the design. So I'm going to choose one of these little flowers, and I'm going to draw my chalk line pencil so I keep it straight going across the apron, and that is what I'm going to decorate my apron with. All right, so I just want to go probably an inch up, and I'm just going to draw my chalk line across there. Make sure I can see it. So now I know I will be straight, and I think I've decided on this one right here. So I need to get to that stitch on my machine. Before I stitch on my actual block, I'm going to grab just some scrap fabric and see what this looks like. That's pretty cute. Okay, so that's what's going to be going on to the apron. And the only thing I'm doing is my fingers are not really on there. I'm just trying to make sure I keep guiding it on that little pink line. But just like let your machine feed it through at its pace and let it take it the way it needs to. Many of us have machines that have decorative stitches on them and we never use them, so this is a great excuse to use some of those decorative stitches, because there is no way I could have hand stitched this quickly. All right, so now we have a cute little flower row across our apron. And if I wanted to, I could add another one or maybe two more. That would be super cute. I might do that. We'll see. The only thing left to do this week is just trim up our blocks, and they are going to be 6.5 by 8.5. So let's see where that leaves us. If we put 3/4 of an inch at the bottom of the apron, we have about 3/4 of an inch at the top, and we can center it right around 1/2 of an inch on both sides. So this is going to get us 3 sides of our block. And then we'll do the same thing to the other one. And I did add 2 more strips of decorative stitching there. It's just so cute, isn't it? I'm very happy with the way this one turned out with the modification, just to get that hand embroidery out of the picture for me. And you too, if you choose to take that path. All right, so let's look at these on the design wall and see what we have. These 2 cute little aprons will be going right here on the side of our quilt. So super cute. I'm very excited about these. So that seemed like a pretty easy week comparatively to some of the other ones that we've had in the past for this quilt. And we have 1 more week and 2 more aprons to make before we can start putting everything together. But that's where we're at for right now. I hope you picked up a few tips or tricks with this week's video. If you need some help with your bias tape, make sure you check out that video that I've devoted to just talking all about bias tape. And if you have a machine that has all your decorative stitches, consider doing some decorative stitches on that apron instead of having to do that hand embroidery. Also, remember that I do have the measurements for that accent fabric in the cheat sheet, so make sure you download the update for that, and you should be good to go. So, yeah, this is coming together really quickly all of a sudden. I am so excited about the Let's Bake quilt. I hope you are too. I hope you've enjoyed the videos, and I hope you've picked up some tips and tricks that you can incorporate into this quilt or another craft you have going on in your craft room. Until next time, find joy in all you do, carve out some time for crafting and creating, and remember, it's always better when you make stuff up.